August 18th, 2025 meeting of the Fire Rescue Building Committee. The Zoom connection and dial-in connection can be found on the agenda online if you so choose. I'm going to call the meeting to order. From my left, we have Fire Chief Deering, Jeff Deering, Rich Waldo, Peter Canine, Rick Ciafalone. I'm David Little. We do expect Mark Matheson, our Select Board member, to be coming. Kathy McNamara, Emily Miller, Mark Reel, Mike Solitro is with us. And I see Cliff Rhodes online. So I think we're ready to start the meeting. I'm just going to open it up for just general comments now that everybody's been able to see the scoring for the 8 applications we received.
Chair, just one comment. Is there any public comment?
Yeah.
Skipped on that one.
Oh, I did skip. Okay. Is there anybody here to speak for public comment? Gail? Lynn?
Is it a disappointment?
No, Lynn, would you like anybody online for public comment?
No hands raised.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So, did anything jump out to anybody when they reviewed the scores that they'd like to bring up before?
Let me print one for you.
For the most part, I thought it was,
Bring it on.
I know what I did, right? So for the most part, I think people are pretty well in line here. There were some outliers on some proposals as far as grading is concerned, but overall, it seems as though people are pretty much aligned with what I was thinking, so.
Agreed. Nothing surprised me at all with from top to bottom as far as the scores were concerned. So,
Thanks, Mike.
that being said, we have 3 that kind of stand out among all of them, and then 5 that, or the 4th and 5th, that kind of come in a little bit lower. Have people given thought to how many interviews we should conduct? And if so, I'd like to hear comments.
Well, I would suggest 3 as my thought based on looking at where we are here. You've got, for the 4th place, nearly a tie, which would lend to think, all right, if we're gonna interview Colliers, they have 774 and a half points. Left field is at 774. That ends up being 5 that we would interview, I would think. So my suggestion and the way I would lean is the top 3.
Anybody else?
I'm along with Mark a little bit. I would probably suggest that we interview 4. I know it's pretty close on the 4th and the 5th one. And the only reason why I say that is just because Colliers seems to have a pretty good understanding of public safety facilities. They do have a lot of current work with fire stations, public safety buildings. They seem like they're a good-sized company. However, they do have a large workload or current workload. So we got one shot at this to get a good OPM, and I think the difference of just interviewing 3 and 4 is not really that much more work. When we start getting into 5, 6, 7, 8, yeah, I think that's a little time consuming. So my suggestion would be to interview 4, but I could go with the top 3 as well.
My biggest issue with Colliers is the individuals that they proposed for the projects. If you look at the director, no fire station experience. If you look at the manager, project manager, no fire station experience. If you look at the on-site rep, no fire station experience. And do we want the 3 people that are at the top of this org chart to have no experience building anything like this? I think that's a bad move.
I would agree with that.
That's the one sort of discrepancy that I had than everybody else, is I put left field a little bit higher than CH and Colliers, because of the fact that if you took a look at their site staff,
Yeah.
just a ton of experience building things like this on Cape.
Some of the guys from left field did the DPW building, and it worked very smooth. I mean, when we had problems, I mean, they were all over it. Left field was not in existence at the time, but some of the personnel that are now with left field did do the work for the DPW.
Let the record show that we've been joined by Mark Matheson. I had left fields scoring higher than Colliers as well.
But what about CHA?
I didn't think they had enough, the number of people they had working for them. I think it's, when it's gonna come to things like value engineering and that kind of thing, that, the smaller firms just don't have in-house. I think it's gonna be important to get somebody with a full staff.
So we're still talking about the number of interviews, though. Anybody else have thoughts on how many interviews I mean, regardless, I think we're going to have to do 2 days of interviews. Unless we go to 3 and we squeeze that in one day. I mean, that's the only advantage of going to 3. If the committee is willing to commit to a significant amount of time in one evening.
The big issue with having it in 2 days is if you have let's say you have 2 the first day, can't the 2 that are on the second day see or know what happened or be able to watch the interview?
The interviews would be in a public session, yes.
Yeah, so you're giving an unfair advantage to the other 2 that aren't on that first day.
Understood.
And
Yeah,
I don't want to set ourselves up for any possible issues.
Again, if we standardize the questions, they can be distributed before. It just needs to be a level playing field. Having the questions beforehand might be a way to alleviate that if there's the 2. But it is a public session, so they would have the opportunity to watch how it was conducted.
So Peter, were you saying 3 or 4? Or you just?
I didn't say.
Disagreeing with the
I didn't say, but I think based on what we just discussed, I think probably 3 is the way to go, and just do it all at once.
After they all get interviewed, we would talk about them and discuss them, compare and contrast kind
Well,
of a thing?
I defer to what Rick had mentioned at the last meeting. A half an hour for the interview, half an hour or 15 minutes for questions, and then 15 minutes alone amongst ourselves before the next interview. I thought that was an excellent idea.
Can you say that again? Say, just the sequence.
Half an hour interview,
Yep,
15 minutes for questions,
yep.
and then they leave, and we have 15 minutes by ourselves before the next person comes in.
It's more like 30-minute presentation,
Yeah.
right? It's like, because the interview, I mean,
Right.
it's 30-minute presentation, 15-minute questions, 15 minutes of us just discussing it. And then we can do it in 3 hours, which will still be a little bit of a marathon, but.
It would, but I think it would behoove us to do it not only for someone watching online, but for all of us to get it all in one evening.
I think so too.
I think that would,
Yeah.
my head would be able to handle that better, I think, than having to wait a week and then go through it again.
Right.
I also just think 4 is a lot to compare. If we can narrow it down to 3, it's just something about 3 is a little easier to measure than 4 against each other.
Yeah, and to Mark's point, they're 3 and 4 or 4 and 5 are basically tied. So is that really half a point?
So which one?
So which one, or that's a half a point. So I would say 3 is my also. I would say
Any thoughts, Chief?
I like the idea of three, and I think the one night, sort of in the layout that we're discussing, I think is the way to go. I think with those three companies, based on what I have for their experiences, I think we might find somebody in that group to do what we need.
If there are no other comments, can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion that we interview the top three candidates according to our scoring poll to be scheduled for our next available meeting, which is August 25th, is it?
It's so, if possible, if they can't do it they can do it the following one,
Following.
right?
Right.
So
That
one-
isn't the following one Labor Day.
Labor Day.
Well, we would have, so it's the 25th, we had it in the schedule, 25th or the 8th as interview days. So we could try to, we
we
just
could-
need to make sure that they
You
can
think
all
we could
attend.
press them into the 25th?
That'd be great.
Is there room available?
So, do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
So I'll start as far as the scheduling. We can start scheduling this as early as tomorrow for next Monday, the 25th. I would think we'd probably, given that there's 3 weeks out to the 8th, we'd have a higher likelihood to have all three of them line up, 5:15, 6:15, and 7:15 on the 8th.
Yeah.
But if we could somehow get it the 25th, we would book that. So that would be our first choice. Foreseeing summer schedules, I would think the 8th is more likely, but that's just my conjecture.
That's a tall order. Give them a week.
No, I know, I
think it's a
understand.
tall order to give them a week. 30-minute, presentation. It might be better to do the 8th, but I hate losing time.
Well, it doesn't change our timeline. It just means that we had said that the 15th of September would be the day we send a recommendation to the town
Okay.
manager.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think out of fairness, 1 week might be a little tough for them to be able to deliver a presentation and prepare
pressure.
for the questions that we're going to ask.
Just so you know, I will not be here in person on the 8th. Potentially, I can Zoom in, but I won't be here in person, if that makes a difference to anybody.
Will you be able to zoom in?
Potentially. I am scheduled for 2 days at Dana-Farber, so if
Oh,
I have
okay.
time, if it works out on that Monday night, I'll be able to Zoom in, but can't do
Understood.
that today.
Well, we have an abundance of members, so I think that the important thing.
And I don't
is
want to hold up the
time
process
schedule.
on that. My other thought was just, their presentations that we have are so complete, I think, and I understand what you're saying about giving them a week to come down here and line it up, but if they want the job,
Yeah.
they're gonna be here. And they're gonna have their best foot forward, and they'll be here, and they'll be, looking to get that job, so if we can get it on the 25th, I think, again, just to keep us moving forward. It'd be a plus.
Just as hypothetical here, if they were available via Zoom, would you want them, or is this strictly in person, your interview
I
request?
think it should be in person.
I agree.
Yeah.
I want to look across the table. Do people agree with that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would too, yeah.
Why don't we just, if we can get them all on the 25th, we'll do that. And if there's an issue, considering the short time frame, then we could look at the 8th and make
Okay.
that the date.
Okay.
So that'll be an amendment to the motion, 25th or the 8th if necessary. All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Okay, discuss interview questions. Quite honestly, I racked my brain to try and come up with interview questions, and the only one I did kind of related to working with the elementary school. Beyond that, I don't really, I was not, I think some of them are good, I think some of them are redundant, but you want to just go through them one by one and see what people think?
Sure.
The first one, tell us about a project where you had to protect the owner's interest in a dispute. Please describe the situation and how did you resolve it? So I think this goes back to working with the elementary school, whoever suggested this one. If there was a dispute, it's probably citing the building or,
I don't know if that, I look at this and I think a dispute between the town and the general contractor, and there's an issue with a change order, maybe whether or not the change order is valid, whether it was part of a base contract or is out of scope work, or whether the pricing on the change order is accurate. I mean, you could be right, I could be right, I don't know that, when I first read that, I thought it was a great question, though, to ask, because nobody wants to have to pay more
so
than they.
dispute's a pretty broad term.
I think dispute's a broad term.
I think both of those that you raise are important, like within a butter or another property owner is one category that we should ask about, and then what you're talking about, the construction process.
I think it makes sense to leave it broad,
Yeah,
just in general, like,
let's see what they say,
right.
yeah.
We want to see them represent the town. I mean, that's the main thing that we want to see. Even with the designer, we want to see them represent the town when we're dealing with the designer as to what is the most efficient design, what is the right materials to use, and basically just represent what they're supposed to do. So I think dispute can be through the design phase, through the site selection phase, all the way through construction. So I think it'd be interesting to see some examples of things that they have dealt with in the past and how they've represented the town.
Okay, so everybody likes that question.
I like the question. I found some similarities. I mean, I know we're going to go through each one of these, but I did find some similarities, and I can identify it when we get there, or I could just point them out now, whatever you'd like.
No, if you want to point out ones that are similar that could be, perhaps be combined, that would be.
This one is similar to, have you ever handled a dispute between the stakeholders?
Exactly.
It's close to that, right? But this one is defining who's the dispute with. So,
Yeah. What was the dispute? How did you manage it? What was the outcome? So pretty similar to that very first question. So I think they can all be combined into one. And I think 5 down from that one, tell me about a time you had to resolve a conflict between 2 different departments or stakeholders. What was the result?
very similar, all three of them.
So I think they're all very similar. I think we could
So
just reduce
could
them.
we add in number 1, add in a dispute, whether it has to do with a change order, stakeholder conflicts, or just keep it vague?
I-
Just keep number 1 vague.
I'd prefer to keep it vague and let them explain their, real-life application, whatever it might be.
Yeah, the first one is very broad, and I like that. I think that's a good one. We can cross out the other two.
In terms of your process, when that broad question is asked, would we have, I know I've been in some committees interviewing people where you ask the question, that's it. The question's asked, they answer, move on to the next one. I've been in some where you ask the question, they respond, you get a follow-up to try and get some kind of nuance on, the things that we were talking about in terms of, was it between, was it a change order that needed to be negotiated? Was it something within, stakeholders that needed to be worked out? So I think it's important if we know before we have the interviews, is like, what process you would prefer to follow.
I think we'll probably do it a little more formally, but I think a follow-up question would be appropriate, but that, during the interview, it should probably go through the chair. Just so it's a little more formal than our kind of ad hoc way that we do it right now. People agree?
I agree with that.
I think that gives us the flexibility to kind of get a
Yep.
little more information if we want a little more information on something.
Okay, so I've crossed off 7
7 and 11.
and 11. And we're going to consider them combined in number 1. How do you track and communicate budget, schedule, and risk changes so that the owner is never caught by surprise? I
I like that question a lot, too.
Comments?
I think it's a great question.
Okay. 3, how can you assist the town in value engineering the design of the fire rescue station?
Now, this is similar to another one. Can you give examples of value engineering you've done on large-scale projects? I guess probably should have one value engineering question. Or not, depends upon which one you think is better.
Could those questions be combined?
Yeah, that's a good point, too.
Can you give examples of value engineering
So just
you've done on fire rescue stations?
add number 9
Good idea.
to number 3.
9 plus 3.
9 plus 3.
Somebody will have to wordsmith that.
Describe your experience as an OPM, helping the client and providing constructability advice regarding site selection for facilities. Please give a specific example in which you provided these services.
I'll tell you, that was one of my questions, and just because that's the one thing that has me concerned is site selection and how can we use the OPM to help us select the appropriate site.
I think it's excellent.
I think it gives them the ability to go a little deeper in the services that they provide and how they can help us. Obviously, it's the expectation that they're going to come in here prepared. They're going to be reviewing those previous reports. They're going to know what our challenges are, and I'd like to see what they can offer us and how they can help us get through the process. So I think it's a good question.
Describe your experience utilizing any specific project working on a site confined by existing public facilities that remain fully operational during construction. This is great, considering that we're certainly hoping to keep the current facility fully operational during construction, right?
And this could also include the school, right? It's also thinking about the school as well, besides the existing fire rescue.
Yep. How many questions are we looking?
I was just
You
thinking.
got 15 minutes, it's not like you can give them 3 and
Well,
they've got 5 minutes.
let's go through these, and then if we need to parse them out, we can. Let's just,
Right.
this question is directed at the day-to-day contract for the
Should have been
town.
contact, that's mine again, I'm sorry. Typo.
Day-to-day contact for the town as well as the on-site representative. Please describe your experience building a facility like we are looking to build here and provide an example of how this project will be different than your experience.
I'm just trying to really make sure that the people that we have here, that we have to talk to every day, and the people that are gonna be providing us the information that they see on a day-to-day basis have done this before numerous times. I think it's very risky to have this job be a resume builder. I don't want this to be something that builds somebody's resume. I want this to be sort of like the cherry on the top.
So I find one of the most important roles of this position is their ability to communicate. Not only to communicate with this committee, communicate with the select board as needed, communicate with the public. So I see this question a little bit similar to number 2, which is how do you track and communicate budget? But I think I might just take it a little bit deeper in terms of that communication. How do you communicate that day-to-day activity? So be interested to see what their response is on that. So I think it's a good question.
The other thing that I was trying to do here was the fact that the OPM is going to be speaking in town meetings. And the individuals, whoever that individual is going to be on the OPM, we want to see how, like, the question to be directed to that individual so we can see how well they're articulating their points to us, because we want them to be able to do a very good job articulating their points to the general public. Because many times you'll have an interview and there'll be one person that can talk really good and they do all of the talking. And then when the job comes, they're not around anymore. And the person that's talking to the public, we've never heard them talk to anybody before.
And I think asking them to state what's different than your experience before is a hard question to ask, because they really don't know. But then they have to come up with what mistakes have I made and what can I do better, kind of a thing.
It's just a loaded question. There's
Yeah.
a lot of things going on in there, especially with how is this project different,
Yeah.
right? Because
That's a
then you need to know about this project, so we're also trying to understand how well you know about this project too.
I think it's a great point, talking who's going to be the point person for the OPM, and what's their ability to communicate and articulate. That's going to be very key to this, definitely. It's a good question that way.
So do we want to add on to that or change it at all, or just keep it the way it is? We've kind of,
I'm biased because it's my question, but it's like the whole vague thing, right? You leave it vague, leave it open,
See
and
what
see
they
where
say.
they go with it.
Yeah.
Right? Because if I'm somebody that has a lot of knowledge on this project, and then I also have knowledge on other projects that are similar to this, I'm going to speak on this very well. If I don't, then I'm going to have all sorts of fillers and fluff, and I'm going to weave around, and I'm never going to get back to where it needs to be. And you're going to be able to pick that out pretty quick.
Could I just maybe point out, I think we could assume that they're going to speak to their experience building a fire rescue station to us. But it's really that second part, to provide an example of how this project will be different than your experience. So I think if we say, please describe your experience building a facility like this one, we probably already heard, well, we should have already heard that
Yeah.
in their presentation. Do we want to pare that down to just really hone in on that? How will this be different than the experience you've had?
You mean not ask them about a project that's like this one and just say, I don't think
Well-
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
I'm saying through the presentation they're going to make to us, if they don't talk about how their experience relates to the project,
Yeah.
then, I mean, I think that's a major problem. So at this point, when we're asking
Good point.
questions,
Yeah.
we've already heard about their experience building a project, a fire rescue station, where we should have. So if we ask them to talk about their experience, they should have already done that.
If you look at like CHA, well, not CHA, if you look at left field, right, which is different than CHA, but look at the people from left field, right, where they came from. Majority of them were stolen from CHA, right? So if somebody from left field is speaking, and they're not gonna be able to give a left field project, right? Because all their experience was stolen from the people that they took from CHA. So you're putting this person on the podium here to talk about
Okay,
their
so you-
particular experience instead of the experience of the firm.
So specifically, this question, I see what you're saying. It's directed to the specific staff members.
That's one of the things that's the most important to me is like who's here, who's going to be here, because the company is ancillary.
Okay, so I feel like I just want to rephrase it a little bit to capture what you're doing here, though. So we come back to
what
it.
if we just,
Can I inject something, just
please?
might help clarify? So when I was going through the proposals, I was looking at the staffing that they have listed. And so for Vertex, their project manager is Luke Owen. And for Pomeroy, their project manager listed was Alex Murphy. And so would we, and for CHA, Senior Project Manager Tom Downey. So when we're having the interviews, can we expect that those people will be here and we can direct a question directly to those people?
We can direct them who needs to be here.
Yeah. To go back to what you were saying earlier in terms of, we want to be sitting here face to face, talking to the people, that the person that's going to be the point on this, that's going to town meeting, that's going to select board meetings, that's going to the public to clarify, explain, lay it out there, So who's that person gonna be? And we want them to be here for the interview on the 25th. And then this question is directed towards them and get their response.
So that would mean we would request that the day-to-day contact and the on-site representative be present at the
Present.
interview.
Yeah.
We can do really whatever we want here. We can say you're only allowed to have 3 people here, and they need to be, you know, these 3 people. If we don't limit the amount of people that can be here, and they could bring, I mean, you saw some of these proposals, there's 7, 8 people on there. This place is gonna be flooded. And when you do have all of that, they may take the best speaker, who might not necessarily be that person that's gonna be here all the time, and do the presentation, and you may never see that person again. So if we say, we only want 3 people here, we want it to be the project director, the project manager, and the on-site representative, and that's it. That's all we want here. And then I think
And
that's,
just tell them that's what we expect. I mean, you know,
but we can limit them and say
Yeah.
nobody else.
right.
Yeah.
I think from what I could tell from the presentations, I think that was the way most of these outfits worked. It was, and again, going back to the DPW, that was my experience. We had one guy and he was the point guy and that was it.
Some of the proposals, though, didn't tell you who was gonna be there
No, they didn't.
every day.
Yeah, I don't
tell
think
you
they,
that.
I see, I would think they would be challenged to tell you who's going to be the on-site representative. Now, Mike, I don't know if you can clarify this, but I think our objective right now is to do an OPM for design services right now, which eventually leads to construction phase services as well. But there's still the ability, if we have an OPM for design phase services and we're not happy with them, I believe we can change them for construction phase services. So I don't know if that expectation of having the on-site representative be identified now and at this meeting, because that could be completely different in the future. I think the main thing is that we have that project manager who is our contact person, that day-to-day person. And then if we go into construction phase services, then we could probably potentially interview who's going to be the one that's going to be on site. So I'm all for it, for requesting it, but I wouldn't be surprised if one came back and said, we don't know yet. We don't know who would be the on-site representative at this point.
Was it advertised, OPM services, is OPM for design services, that's the way it was advertised?
Well, can we, let's get through the questions and then go back to who we're expecting, if we can.
Yeah, I mean, I just threw that out there because I thought it might have some bearing on what the specific question is gonna be in terms of, you know, information we're looking for. We wanna have the right people that can give us that information when we ask the question.
Yeah, that changes a lot of the questions, right? As well, I mean, then you start to get the constructability of review, the value engineering, all of that stuff has more importance. Those are all design phase services.
It's just the full title, Request for Qualification, Owner's Project Management, Services for Design and Construction, New Fire Rescue Station.
Construction is in the advertisement too.
So the contract that we put as a sample contemplates the OPM having the ability to stay on, but gives the town the flexibility to evaluate in between. And that contract is the next piece as well.
Is it,
I would expect that they would have a pretty darn good idea of who the on-site representative is gonna be.
Everybody, it was named,
Right.
the majority of them, so.
They may, but I've seen a lot of projects where you think you're on a 6-month time frame, but because of other complications, a public process, your project doesn't get off to construction for a year and a half later. So, you know, the site representative might be identified right now, but it might not be the same person that we get 6 months, 8 months, 10 months.
I know the council's on Zoom, and I've been involved in projects where if you designate key individuals, and if those key individuals don't show up, they have to pay fines. I mean, and you could put that in there, if you really like a particular on-site representative, you really like a project manager, say, if you give them the contract and say, if this person does not show up and is not available throughout the life of the project, this is a fine. And there's stipulations to that, like if the person quits that firm, or they retire, then you don't have to worry about it. But if that firm just takes that individual and puts them on another project, then you can find that firm. So we can do that if we want to, I think.
And I don't know if council's going to answer that question, if it was
Oh,
actually,
you
you can put those
Sure.
stipulations.
You know, I see those, I don't necessarily see a fine so much, although you could build that in, there's no reason you couldn't. But definitely in every OPM agreement, you do have a provision in there about, you know, certain people being there for the life of the project. And if they're not there, any substitute has to be agreed to by you.
Yeah, they typically, instead of the word fine, they use liquidative damages, which I don't think that's the correct phrase, but they use liquidated damages in the,
See, I still question whether we're going to actually execute a contract with an OPM through construction services. I have a feeling, when it comes down to it, it's going to be a time and material based on the design phase of it, and we're going to execute it for the design phase. We'll go through it, and then we'll do a contract amendment. But I really don't know, and maybe that's something we still got to think about in the next step is, what term of a contract are we going to execute? Are we going to execute it all the way through construction, or are we just going to
Well, I think
execute it in
we're
phases?
getting ahead of ourselves right now.
100%.
Let's finish the questions and then dig a little deeper. What distinguishes you from other OPMs? Do people like that? I don't, I'm not I'm not fond of it either.
I think with the limited amount of time we have, that
yeah.
we should be able to decipher those pieces on our own without asking them.
Okay, let's cross that one off. Can you give examples of value engineering you've
We're
done?
combining that one with the
Oh,
third
I'm
one.
sorry.
It's okay.
Yep. If hired, what would your first 90 days look like?
That's another one of those ones where basically we're going to be dictating what's happening. I'm not sure we can ask them.
Maybe we can reframe it to say, what do you feel are the most important things that we should be doing in the next 90 days?
The 90 days.
Yeah, I would agree with
Contract
that.
execution,
You
yeah.
know, that's got to be narrowed down a little bit. It's a little too
We
open-ended.
know what our next step is, so, you know, I don't know that this really gets at something we're trying to,
We'll be, once we hire the OPM for the design phase, then we're going to be looking at finding an architect.
right?
So isn't that what they're going to be doing for the next 90 days?
Yeah.
So they have to guess right.
Eh, They all should have the same answer. We're going to help you find an architect.
Well, if we just, I mean, I can go without it. I'm not sure how others feel.
Don't we pretty much know what they're going to be doing for the next 90 days?
I don't think we need it.
Cross it out?
Tell me what you know about CPT, ED, or crime prevention through environmental design. Have you ever implemented it?
I've never even heard of
I don't know what it means.
This was my question. So this came up during the feasibility study for the school, and came up from the police department. And this is something that, I wrote it down because I wasn't going to remember. A multidisciplinary approach that utilizes an urban and architectural design to reduce crime. It involves strategically shaping the physical environment to influence human behavior positively and deter criminal activity. So being that this is being set hypothetically between two schools, it's important to keep the children safe as number one priority. So that was just something I threw out there to see if anybody had ever heard of it, other than the OPD.
I got a good story behind it for later.
Sweet. So, you know.
Given that it's a fire station, I mean, I get it. I get
It's a
the
public
school.
building, though, because people are allowed to go in there all the time, and so, and it is really close to the school now, and, you know, thankfully, there's never been a problem that I've heard of, but, you know, it's just something to keep in mind, being that we're dealing in such close
will-
proximity to children.
Will they know what this question means?
I don't know, maybe.
I think we have to parse it a little bit if we're going to ask it.
It could be a question more for them to ask the architects.
That's true.
I mean, I had to look it up. I didn't know what it was, and you know, my review, it seemed almost towards development, to create safe developments, residential developments, but I can see the application to a public building as well as, you know, good line of sight, so who's coming in, and secure facility, and, you know, lit parking lot and things like that are safe, so.
Having safe barriers between the two schools, you know,
Yeah.
and have it, because you can't have the public on private campus, I mean.
In school, yeah.
School grounds during school hours, so.
Yeah, would that be a question for the architect more than the project manager? I think we all agree it's an important aspect of it, but I just don't know whether it's,
Yeah. That's fine. You can-
who we ask it to whom we ask it.
I think it's going to become evident pretty quickly about the proximity of the school and the fire station and safety and respect for the children and things like that. I don't know if we really need this. Or if we do, I think we need to reword it to make it.
I think it is a design. I look at this and just the word design comes out.
Yeah, I feel like it may be more helpful to hear that from a potential designer, right? That's where the real
So
meat of it comes in.
can you save that
Yeah, for sure,
for the architect? Okay.
definitely.
Let's do that. And give an example of a time you had to make a decision quickly with incomplete or conflicting information, and what was the result? I love that one. Because everybody faces that at some point in their lives, and it'd be interesting to see how someone responds. I'd probably respond by saying I would never make a decision quickly with incomplete, conflicting information if I was being.
But you had to. You had to. It's another one of those broad questions because they can answer this without even a project as part of the answer. Right? I mean, you're leaving it open.
Yeah, I
To
don't.
See what they,
I
to
don't
see what
mind
they
it.
say would be
It's kind of-
interesting.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's good.
Okay.
We're at 6 questions now.
We have
3, 4,
7.
5, 6. Well,
5.
two of them are combined, like the
Right,
two
we
value
had-
engineering.
We had 1, 2, and then 3 and 9 were combined. 4, 5, 6,
Oh, okay. I didn't-
and 11.
Agreed.
I skipped 6.
So if we think about 15 minutes, do you think that they can have 3 minutes to answer a question? Or do you think you do 3 questions and give them 5 minutes to answer a question?
Just as somebody who just watched this, do we want to revisit the 30-15 breakout, or is that what you want to do? Maybe 20-20 or 15-30 the other
That's a
way?
good point, because 30 minutes is a long presentation.
That is.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's swap that. 15
15, 30.
presentation, 30 questions.
It's a good idea.
So then that's 5 minutes with 6 questions, is that right?
5 minutes for 6 questions.
7 questions?
We can't get this right.
I have 7 questions.
Yeah, 7.
Yeah, 7, you're right.
7.
Unless we get one out.
And we're providing these to them.
If we're doing all the interviews the same night, that's up to the committee.
I would say we don't. If we're doing them all the same night, I would say we don't give them the questions.
Well, they already have them if they watch this meeting.
You know, I do want to see their ability to think on the spot. You know, see how they can actually develop an answer pretty quick. So I am inclined, as you say, is let's not give it to them. Let's see how they respond to the questions that they have. Just give give them the opportunity to do a 20-minute presentation, 15-minute presentation of what separates them from the other OPMs, what services they have, what kind of depth do they have in their bench, and just kind of be able to explain, and then we ask our questions.
And as Mark said, if they're doing their homework, they're watching
They're
the
resourceful.
archive video before they come in for an interview.
So collectively, do we feel that we have enough to make a decision with those 6 questions? I mean, did we hit everything that we wanted to hit? I know we each threw out 3 randomly, but collectively, do we feel like we've got everything? Do we want to know about their performance at a town meeting? You know, have they ever represented a town at a town meeting asking for funding for construction? Because that's another part of this obstacle that we have is not only designing it, get a successful designer, but taking it to town meeting, getting that public communication out, help us educate people as to why this project's needed.
That's one of the things that we didn't talk about, was public outreach.
Yeah, I mean, with the exception of how do you track communication, but we don't talk about public outreach. And so, does it make sense to have another question to give examples on how they've fostered consensus
Can I
on a
suggest
project?
something here? We might be able to touch on a couple of things. Maybe a question about BIM, because that's going to go to the public outreach thing. The BIM is a building information modeling. What it is all of the CAD systems now have some capability to do 3-dimensional work. And the way it's being used is, obviously, there's the promotional aspect of things where you can do renderings. But I think one of the bigger things is, it's some of the, I can think of 2 situations where the question came up to the architect and it kind of went by. The classic one in my mind right now is the police station. If you look at the front of the police station, it looks very nice. If you go by on Route 28, there's a mushroom farm of ventilators on that roof. And if you stand there and you look at that and you say, couldn't those have gone to the other side? That's a perfect BIM situation, because at this point, that you can take the building apart literally from the bottom to the top. There's an incredible amount of mechanical stuff, HVAC stuff. The other situation that comes to mind to me was when we visited the Hyannis Fire Station. I remember standing in a bay with one of the firemen down there, and it was a repair bay. And I said to the guy, well, there was a personnel lift in it, which is a piece of equipment that you go up in, and it's a bucket usually kind of thing. The guy says, oh yeah, that lives here because we got to get to all this equipment up at top in this bay here. And I got to thinking, well, that's a $70,000 piece of equipment that sits in that bay, takes up the space, and they have to do it because somebody didn't think about how to get this to the stuff on top. This is a situation where with the BIM, that's maybe one of those things where catwalk gets added, or they start moving around, pipes so that you don't have conflicts. But I think it's considered kind of the state of the art in a lot of situations, and I think it would make a tremendous difference to somebody who is familiar with that. Because it's available, everywhere.
How would you write that question, Peter?
Before we go to that, as we've had this discussion, what runs through my mind is, those would seem to be the questions that we would be asking the design firm and the architect, and would want our project manager to help us ask those right questions. But the public outreach and, properties of what the design looks like and stuff, wouldn't that be more the architect's responsibility
You'll
as
see,
opposed to
if
the
you looked
project
at,
manager?
if you looked at all those presentations, you'll see the offices that have the people in the back room and the deep talent. BIM thing is always there. The other ones, it was not mentioned. And it's, like I said, it's a tool that can be used everywhere, particularly early on in design stuff. It's not just
Before
a,
before an architect's hired?
Because you have to have, a drawing in Autodesk, and then and then from Autodesk, you use BIM, and then you get the OPM involved, and then they create BIM is a 3D model, and then you go 4D, they throw scheduling into it, and you go 5D, they throw cost into it. So you can literally take a steel beam, run your mouse over it, and you can look at when that steel beam is going to be installed and how much that steel beam is going to cost. And then they go 60, and the 60 will have your assets in it. So you'll have an air handling unit. You can go over the air handling unit. It'll tell you the make, the model, the last time it was serviced, who services it, when you need to get it serviced again, all that other stuff. But from the designer starts it because they create that 3D model, and then it can get handed to the OPM that'll do the estimate, right? That'll do the schedule, and then they could bring that into the BIM, right? And then you bring it to the end user, the town, right? The fire rescue, and then they bring the assets into it, and then it creates 60. But BIM has to start with the designer.
yeah.
But the
Not
the
the
OPM
OPM.
can, if the OPM has experience, then they can take that model, and then they can start adding all the other
So
stuff.
could that be the question then? Do you have experience with
BIM.
Yeah.
BIM?
Yeah, it could be a question. Yeah.
Just as simple as that?
Yep.
Okay, well, why don't we add that in?
Well, I feel like we went off track of what we were talking about, which was about,
No, we were-
The public outreach is
Hearings.
kind of where we
We
started.
started with public outreach and it morphed into BIM.
I just feel like we didn't finish the conversation about a question about public outreach.
We didn't.
Yeah, well, and again, I think that was where I was trying to inject into the conversation, that I would think that the public outreach aspect of it would be more with the designer and the architect as opposed to the project manager.
But I think our OPM is going to be an important part of our public outreach.
But is he gonna be at
For
town
somebody
meeting?
to be
Is he
familiar-
gonna be the one at town meeting, or is it gonna be the architect?
In the past, it's been OPMs.
Yeah, these proposals all said that they go to town meetings and that they have website, they can, host a website and do all that stuff for you. They seem to be saying that that's part of what they do. I mean, that's what I got at least.
Yeah.
But I don't think, if we ask a question about the BIM, we don't want just a yes or no, right? Someone just says yes, we're not like, okay, good. We need to follow up with something.
Be like, describe your experience using building information modeling and how it helped a particular project, and be specific on how it helped it and what type of facility it was.
So we can really hear how familiar they are with what you guys are talking.
Yeah.
Or we could rope it into how this conversation all started, which is,
Public outreach.
how do you help a town build consensus on a project? And have you had experience using BIMs
There you go.
to help,
The part that I go to with this
Laura
public
over here?
outreach is the fact that, are we gonna need the OPM to talk in front of the town, to plead our case for why the building should be in a certain place, right? Because and that kind of ties to that question about selecting a site with constructability. Right? We could sit here, and the select board could sit there and talk about why this particular site is the site that needs to be. But then you can have an OPM that comes up and say, hey, if we put it over there, it's gonna cost this much extra money. There's this that's out there that's that's an undefined variable. That could be possible change orders and things
We've
like
got to
that.
wait until the select board has their meeting on the 26th or the 28th with the Nauset Regional School Committee before we even discuss anything like that. I'm hoping we're going to hear back from the select board with a direction that we move in, and we just don't keep going back and forth on the, because that's the elephant in the room. We have the Nauset Regional property, but that's a whole process in itself that you have to go through that would have to run simultaneous with the design and it goes before the 4 towns in the region. I don't want to go there right now.
But I like what Rich's question.
I
we
think
posed
Rich's
that.
question
That
is great.
really provides us with some insight about generally how the OPM potentially has those abilities, so.
Well, as long as it's general, like, I think that's great, but,
Yeah, as long as we don't say, how do you build consensus on a site selection, but just say, how do you build consensus on a project?
Well, there is a question in here with site selection. So do we not have that? What's that?
I would want to know what their ability to, just like you said, to explain the pros and cons of a site. So I want them to have the ability, depending on how the 28th meeting goes, however the site selection process moves forward, I want to make sure that they have the ability to give us the pros and the cons of a certain site and the facility that we need to fit into that site.
Maybe that, the fourth bullet down, we add that in as far as conveying their opinions on the site selection effectively, right? Describing that, because that fourth bullet down is talking about constructability advice regarding site selection for facilities. And then we could just take that one step further.
I think that Rich is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're getting at is building consensus about a project as a whole and bringing the community together about supporting the project at the end of the day for funding.
That's what we have Amanda for.
Yes, and I think, I kind of like the questions as being separate, as site selection, separate, but consensus as a whole. How do we get these messages out to the public? How do you get that communication? Do you have a website that you can create? Do you have a team that can create a website where all these documentations can be added to? You know, what do you have? What's the new things that people are doing now for project management and OPM services? So, I mean, I'd like to hear that from them. So I think maybe keeping them separate might be helpful.
Okay.
I think you're on
We
this.
gotta write that,
Okay,
we gotta
so-
write that question
No,
out.
so that
You.
being said, I think that,
I'll start it, and
Let's
someone
put-
smarter than me can wordsmith
no,
it.
let's put Rich's name next to that. Let's assign people to ask the questions. I think that question should come from you.
I like
I
that.
think a couple of specific questions should come from Rick. The BIM question can come from Peter. I think what we should do is, once we've come up with all of these, either volunteer or it's self-evident who should be asking them.
I have 9 questions now.
We gotta cut some.
We
We gotta cut
it
some.
down.
I think the BIM probably should get cut for the designer.
Okay.
You know, unless we want to build it off of another question to see whether they've ever used it before, and then to your thing, it's going to be a yes or a no. You know, do you
We
want
didn't see it in
to?
the presentation.
Right.
Yeah.
It could be a follow-up question.
You're right, because as you said last week, you know you're going to have follow-up questions. So
Well, if I-
we probably,
I don't have to. If there's not enough time, I don't have to.
well, but you indicated you most likely will. So maybe we leave it just the way we have it right now. No more questions.
So how many are we leaving it at?
8?
8 divided by 30. What if we did 6 questions? Do you think we can agree on 6 questions so we can make it an even 5 minutes? And then, I mean, and then we could have somebody actually loosely keeping time on that?
I'll keep time.
Well, you know, two things. One, some of our questions might be answered in their presentation, which would be helpful.
Yep.
And some of the questions might not really require a 4 or 5 minute answer from them.
That's a good point, too.
It gives us some flexibility with that time.
Okay. So 8 it is.
And I think if any of them,
So
to
what
your
is the
point
eighth,
earlier,
what is the 8th question, Mark?
watching,
Rich's question.
Rich's question.
they might have answers to those questions already.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to request that Rich ask question number 8.
Right. Which is simply, how do you help a town build consensus on a project?
I'm going to revert
You're
back to
prepared
the
to-
video and rewatch what you said a few minutes ago.
Right, it was,
Okay.
That was good. And we'll put these all together and have them, done. So Rich is number 8.
I think Rick is number 6, would you agree? That was when.
Yeah, the town-to-town, the day-to-day contact for the town?
5 and 6. Were those were both of yours, weren't they?
Well, technically, 4, 5, and 6 were all 3 of mine. We don't have to ask them all. And I don't have to ask them all. But I will.
Well, I'd like everybody to ask a question.
Okay.
Well, we have 8 questions and 9 people, so someone's not
I'm
asking.
the chair. I'm going to be keeping the timer.
I don't think it's bad to have Rick asking questions because he really knows what he's talking about, and that'll come across. And like, I don't think there's much purpose in just spreading it out to spread it out.
Okay, so are you saying Rick should do 4, 5, and 6?
I'm fine with that. I mean, I think it's good for them to see we've got someone who knows exactly what's going on here.
Do one of you two want to do the stakeholder question?
Which one is that? I'm lost.
Or
Number 7, have you ever handled a dispute between stakeholders? What was the dispute? How did you manage it? And what was the outcome?
Sure. Either
You
one.
can-
That was
yeah.
combined.
Well, we did one instead.
One, right?
Yeah.
One,
That's
7,
number
and-
one.
Oh, 1
7 and
okay,
12 were
combined.
and 7. So that, okay, so
yeah.
11?
who said yes, Kathy or Emily?
I'm fine, or Kathy, either one. Do you want to do it?
Sure.
Okay.
So that was the combination of 1, 7, and 11.
So you're going to be up right off the bat, Kathy.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Number 7.
1, 7, and 11 are combined.
Mm,
1.
that's not what I have.
Come
Number
on,
1 is
that's what I have.
distinctly different. It's talking about a dispute in general. We said that was,
Yeah, we crossed out the other ones because we wanted it to be more general, so we kept
Right.
one. So that we
Correct.
didn't specifically talk about whether it was a dispute, who it was a dispute between.
so we're saying
Let
that
them
Kathy's
just-
asking number 1. Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
And we're not asking a more specific dispute question, or we are, about stakeholders, or?
Well, I think, that would perhaps go back to what we were talking about earlier, where they may answer some of those questions in their presentation, especially if they're watching. But number 2, your follow-up, you can get, to something more specific
If you,
within the follow-up, if they don't give you what you want.
Yep.
So if they answer that in their presentation, do we still ask the question?
I think we do.
Can ask them to elaborate on. We could acknowledge that,
Yeah.
that they presented it, but if you can elaborate.
Yeah, it gives you the chance to be more specific about something as well, if you still have a concern, so.
Who would like to do number 2? 2 and 3. They're both important.
Chief?
I think the chief should ask 3. Because the value engineering is important, because people are gonna be cutting things out of your building.
Happy to ask it, that's no problem. I'll ask any of
Okay.
them.
Who wants to do 2?
I can do 2.
Okay. Am I missing anything?
Number 11. Nope. Hold on.
A quick decision. Right, there was give an example of a time you had to make a decision quickly. We kept that one, right?
Yeah, that last one, David did.
Yep.
I'll ask
Emily,
that.
Kathy?
Sure, I'll do it.
Okay.
But we're gonna have these written up in the exact language that we're gonna do, right?
Yep.
Yes.
So what do you have, Mark?
I have number 1 is Kathy. Number 2 is Mark Matheson. Number 3 is Jeff. Number 4 is Rick. 5 is Rick. 6 is Rick. 7 Emily. 8 Rich.
Wait, 7.
You're 7
Oh.
out of the 8 questions.
Oh,
So number
Here it's number
13.
13.
And can,
Oh, okay. Sorry.
and you can share them so they can be edited? I mean,
Absolutely.
Just for content if we need to?
Sure.
And we're not sharing we're just going to keep these among us.
In the recording.
right.
So does that settle interview questions?
It would appear so.
Think so?
So we have who's being interviewed, we have the format of the interview, and we have the interview questions done.
If I could, since I'll be the one speaking to them, for the interview format, did we land on 15-minute presentation, 30-minute Q&A, and a 15-minute debrief?
Yep.
Correct.
Do you envision the debrief happening after each interview? I just ask because logistically, that might get awkward if we have 3 groups shuttling in and out.
I'm sorry,
He just
group-
doesn't want
it's a
them
group-
hanging out in the hallway together.
Well, more important, if you've got a 5 o'clock, 5:45, they're out.
Yeah.
Might have your 6 and 7 sitting in the audience, or,
Oh, for the discussion, you mean?
It's a public hearing, right?
Public meeting, so.
Public meeting.
So maybe we just
You could
line
just
them
do
all
it at
up
the
and then
end.
discuss them all after?
Yeah, maybe we,
That makes a lot of
I
sense.
think that's fine.
I think that makes more sense, too.
I never even thought about that. They could be sitting in here when we discuss them.
And they will be.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to discuss them all at the end.
good point.
So we'll just say 15 and 30.
Mhm.
The other thing was, were we going to say, dictate who is allowed to be at the interview for each firm?
so I have, and I'll do whatever the committee asks for here, but I have project director, project manager, and on-site representative.
Yeah.
Is that the 3? That's the maximum we want from,
Yeah, but the thing
No,
is,
I
we
don't
have to
think
make
we wanna-
sure we use day-to-day
Do we want to
contact.
say that's a maximum number, or say
Those 3.
Those
have to
three
be here.
at a
Whatever else
minimum?
They bring.
Yeah, I think that's the, at a minimum.
At a minimum, not maximum. Because they might have someone that, you know, they might have a song and dance guy on their staff that they want to bring out before us.
But I think
That's
if
what
we
I did at my job. I was the song and dance guy.
We,
Identify the person that we want
I live with one.
specifically to answer the question, the person we want that's going to be helping us at town meeting or whatever. We want to know who that is, and we want to be able to talk to them directly.
I think we have to make sure that we use the phrase day-to-day contact. Because we need to make sure that, just by saying project manager, on-site representative, project director, that doesn't mean that's the day-to-day contact.
I just worry about the fact if we're requiring these 3 to show up, whether it's going to be a scheduling logistics problem for you to get all 3, all 6, all 9 of them to align on one given day, but well, we'll find out tomorrow. Just start the conversation.
Do we change it from required to request? Like, suggest that we'd prefer to have those 3 people here? Something along those
Yeah,
lines?
because, right, if they don't bring those people here, they know how we feel about that. They're
That's
not
a-
going to get as good of a,
we can ask for them, and if they don't show up, then
yeah.
So let me ask you, so we have by the motion, the 25th to do these interviews, and then I think the second interview date is the 8th of September,
Right.
which is a 2-3 week separation. I mean,
Weeks.
would we be inclined that if they were available on Tuesday, the 26th, or Wednesday, the 27th, would we be okay with that if that worked into their schedule, rather than waiting 2 weeks?
It's finding the meeting room to conduct it in that becomes difficult.
I'm not available on the 26th or the 27th. I mean, I can call in, I'll just be in a different time zone.
Well, I think it's important that you're here. I think it's important that, you know, that the candidates are here and all of us are here.
I think if we're giving somebody the opportunity to win this job, they're going to be here,
We want, and
right?
pretty big
They're gonna show
job.
up.
we want to conduct the interviews on the same evening.
Yeah.
Anything else that we need to discuss? Future agenda items?
The interviews.
Mike, what do you need?
I think I'm good. I have the questions, I have the parameters for the interviews, now it's just scheduling.
Can you share that, could you repeat that again, what you're going to? If you don't
The
mind.
parameters for the interview?
Yeah.
I just have who we would request or who we ask to be here, the project director, manager, on-site representative / day-to-day contact at a minimum. We're not capping them at a maximum. We're gonna set the expectation at a 45-minute interview, 15-minute presentation to start, followed by a 30-minute Q&A. We'll have a 15-minute debrief, either directly following the interview or at the end of all interviews.
I had a quick question. Is there any way that the town could print the proposals for the three firms being interviewed for each one of the committee members, so we had them in front of us?
We can do that, and I just thought if
You mean these?
Yeah.
if we're asking for,
To an office?
if we're asking for a presentation, this might be a question for Cliff, if they want to submit any materials ahead of their presentation, are we going to give them the opportunity? Is that something they can even do? What's appropriate there?
Oh, I think these are the materials.
Yeah, but sometimes they'll ask if they can do a leave behind, right? They'll want to do a leave behind, or what they'll do is they'll do a placemat, right? They'll put like, they'll show up and they'll hand out a placemat to everybody, which is just something that's usually an 11 by 17, and it's got the individuals that are there, so you can look at their face and you can see who they are, and then you can identify everybody like that. So sometimes agencies will not allow any leave behinds like that at all. But some people like a leave behind. It helps facilitate that whole process.
I don't think we need to be that specific.
I think Mike asked Cliff the question.
Cliff, do we need to set parameters as far as what they can bring, what they can provide, and given the leave behind description, what they can leave behind?
Well, I think the only thing that I have a concern about is that we make the request identical to everybody. So I think that we should, if we want to give them the opportunity to bring something, that's fine, but we extend that invitation to everybody, and they can, we either make it mandatory, they have to bring it, or we say you have the option of bringing it, and which will probably compel them to do so because they don't want to be left behind by other people who bring stuff.
So I have a concern about, we asked everybody to submit a proposal. Based on what they submitted, we have chosen 3 firms to be interviewed. If we're saying to them, oh, well, submit even more, I get nervous about the fact that we're eliciting more information from these firms that the 5 that were rejected didn't have an opportunity to present. I don't want to go down that road and have complications because of that. I think, they gave us what they gave us. Based on what they've given us, we've chosen these 3 firms. Now the onus is on us to get whatever else we want in terms of information and whatnot, based on the questions we ask in our follow-ups and whatever. And so,
And
having them bring more materials or whatever, I think,
Well, I think it's
Cause
important,
problems
it's
for us.
important then that everybody be provided a copy of the 3,
yeah.
3 paper copies of,
Does
The 3
everyone want a paper copy?
I have one.
I want one.
I have one.
Yes, please.
Okay, so,
I'll use electronic.
okay,
Electronic.
so we've got
I'm good, I don't need
4 that want a paper copy. You've got one.
I've got one.
I think we might have enough.
So, do we simply just say, no additional materials should be brought to the interview? Keep it as I don't know.
I think just by having them here, right, they kind of like made it to the playoffs, right? So they can take They can grab additional players to come into the game. They can do whatever they want. I mean, we're asking them questions to do a deeper dive on their experience that we're not asking the other 5 proposers. So to leave something behind, a piece of paper, I don't think we're exposing us to any potential.
Yeah, I'm not worried about them. You know, as you said, the placemat.
Yeah.
But when people get these, you know, like you have the picture, here they are, here's
Yeah.
the guy.
Yeah.
So, they want to bring supplements, that's fine. I just, you know, looking at some of the other things that have gone on in town where we put out an RFP, and there was a deadline for the submission of that RFP, and then a couple of months later and a few weeks after that, you know, we kept getting, oh, and we can also do this, and oh, we can also do this, and oh, we can also do this. Somebody brings in all this stuff that was
Yeah, but that's
not legitimate.
they're violating the cone of silence when they do that, because
Yeah.
at a certain point, you can no longer, when the RFP drops to when the notice to proceed comes out, you can't talk to anybody.
Yeah, why make it more complicated? I mean, they've submitted all this information specifically towards this particular project. I mean,
Well,
what
so
more
if
can
someone
they
comes
add?
in with a placemat, they come in with a placemat. We don't,
Yeah.
it just happens.
I
We don't even bring it up.
Yeah,
Yep,
We don't
Yeah.
say,
I like that.
yeah.
Just leave it
Yeah,
open.
I-
Whatever they want to show up with, they show up with. If they don't want to bring anything, they don't bring
Yeah.
anything. Some people don't like to put things in front of the people they're presenting to because they're not going to be paying attention to what they're saying. They're going to be
So-
looking at the piece of paper in front of them.
so let them determine that. If that's part of their,
Okay.
you know, shtick, then
So the instructions will be that they are, there is no instruction as far as materials. If I'm asked directly, I will just say that the expectation is the submission will be what the presentation is based on.
Sure.
Got one other question for Mike. Just because the next meeting, we're going to go straight into the interviews. Are we to evaluate these interviews just like we evaluated their proposals that they submitted? And are we going to give them a quantifying metrics to their evaluation? And if so, does that get added to what we've already submitted? And I don't know if that's more of a Cliff question. I just want to make sure that if we're going to be evaluating them, I know right up front that we're assigning them a score based on their interview.
So I'll let Cliff finish. The point of the evaluations was to identify 3 or more finalists, which we've done this evening. As far as how the interviews are going to be graded, the 3 things we're asked to do in this whole process is fair, consistent, and transparent. That's what we'll keep front and center. We did not include a interview rubric or matrix in the proposal, whereas this evaluation was. Cliff, is there a best practice you'd recommend for evaluating the interviews?
I don't think that you necessarily have to stick to a rubric where you're assigning them points. You can if you want, but you know, you're just going to be discussing it. The points that were used the first time around will, you know, be there for the final selection, and you can use those in any way you want, in addition with the interviews that you're, in order to come to who you think the best candidate is. Really up to you.
So will it be as simple as each one of us do a 1, 2, 3?
Could be, yeah.
Thank you. I like simple.
You mean like at the, when we discuss
The
them
end,
all at
yeah.
the end? Would we discuss them and then come up with a 1, 2, 3?
Yeah.
Because we have to vote on it.
We vote after we debrief.
So you're saying we're not going to do a score per interview question situation?
We're all going to have our own little thing up here,
Right.
right? So.
Okay, I think we're good.
Excellent.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.